There'll be 11 of us, mostly my family. You'll cook, right? I already told them. Delane said it in passing, like she was confirming a grocery order, not assigning me a week's worth of unpaid labor. She didn't even pause long enough to hear an answer. She was too busy texting someone laughing at her screen. Probably her sister. Or her mother. One of the 11. I looked across the room at Jude, my son. He didn't meet my eyes. Just kept scrolling through his phone, then shrugged. She already told them, he mumbled. That was it. No discussion. No. Is that okay, Mom? No. Do you feel up to it this year? Not even a pretend offer to help. I stood by the sink, wiping down the same spot on the counter I'd already cleaned. I could hear Delane's voice in the living room, now chatting on speakerphone, laughing, making jokes, planning where people would sleep in my house without once checking whether I was even staying. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just blank. Like a switch had quietly flipped, and the room was dimmer than before. Last Christmas, I did everything. The shopping, the cooking, even the decorating. Delane had shown up with her family and a tin of peppermint bark from a store, which they all insisted was just a small token, and then spent the next 3 days treating me like the hired help. When I mentioned my back was sore, Jude handed me a heating pad and then walked off. This year, it was assumed, not asked. Assumed. I poured myself a cup of coffee. I held the mug for warmth, not taste. The kitchen felt heavy, even though it was just the 3 of us. You're not doing anything anyway, Delane had said the last time I hesitated about hosting. Not doing anything. That's what she thought. I stood there, quiet, nodding slightly. And just like that, something inside me started to move, not loud, not obvious, just forward. The guest list came in a group message titled Christmas Flow, as if a few emojis softened the command underneath. 2 vegetarians, 1 gluten-free, and Mom no store. Bought anything this year, Delane wrote. Last time the mashed potatoes were a hit. Can you do that again? And maybe a squash bake? Oh, and pecan pie for Dad? He doesn't like pumpkin. No one asked if I had the time, or energy, or interest. 10 minutes later, Jude forwarded another message. Also, we'll need the upstairs cleared. My in-laws will take the guest room. Kids can use the study again. The study, my reading room, my one quiet place with a working lamp and the chair I saved for 6 months to buy. I stared at my phone. The blinking dots meant Delane was still typing. If it's easier, I'll send you my grocery app and you can just go through that. We'll be there the 23rd through the 27th. Easier. For her. I didn't reply. I just closed the app and put the phone face down on the table. They weren't trying to be cruel. That was the hardest part. They didn't yell or demand things loudly. They just operated under this quiet, persistent belief that I was available. Always. That my time belonged to the family first. That family meant me bending without ever pushing back. Last year, Jude said it was easier if I handled the schedule. The year before that, Delane forgot to bring her mother's casserole dish and said, "It's okay, your stuff is nicer anyway." I used to think it was love, that I was needed, but now it felt like obligation, wearing Love's old jacket, familiar, but not warm anymore. I stood up, walked to the cabinet, and pulled out a yellow notepad. Not a list for them, for me. I wrote one line at the top. What do I actually want this Christmas? I sat back down. Pen in hand, heart steady. The first thing I wrote under it was one word gone. I've never kept a tally. Not of the meals, the favors, or the long nights that bled into early mornings. But if I had, it would have been a library by now. And no one in this house has ever borrowed a single page. After my husband died, everything changed in an instant. Jude was 15, too old to not understand, too young to carry any of it. I didn't let him. I picked up every shift I could. Late nights dispatching trains through storms, holidays working double pay, falling asleep in break rooms with my boots still on. There wasn't time for grief, only motion. We kept the house. I kept my job. Jude kept going to school. That was all that mattered. When he got into college, I emptied my savings without blinking. He didn't know at first I told him it was a grant. It wasn't. I refinanced the car and picked up weekend overtime. I mailed him care packages with his favorite cookies and wrote notes he never mentioned. That was okay. I didn't do it for thanks. When he married Delane, I gave them space. I gave them time. And when their first child came early, I moved in for 6 months so they wouldn't have to pay for a nanny. I did laundry, held the baby through colic nights. Let myself fade into the walls as long as they were okay. Even after they moved back in with me just for a year or so, I never said no. Not when they wanted the master bedroom. Not when they asked me to watch the kids on short notice. Not when they slowly stopped including me in decisions that happened right under my roof. And now I get notes about food preferences, group chats with no greetings, texts that say, "We'll need this, not can you help." I used to think love was doing what's needed, no matter the cost. But maybe it's not love if no one ever checks what you have left to give. I reached for the yellow notepad again, crossed out the word gone. Then I wrote, "Somewhere I'm not asked to disappear." We were in the kitchen again when Delane brought it up, like a reminder, not a request. "So everyone's set for the 23rd through the 27th, she said, scrolling through her phone. "Mom's flying in early, so we'll need extra space in the fridge. Hope that's okay." I rinsed my mug and set it in the drying rack. "Perfect," I said, drying my hands on the towel. "I'll be gone that week." Delane didn't look up at first. Jude did. His eyebrows twitched, confused, like maybe he'd misheard. Then Delane gave this little half laugh. "Oh, you're funny," she said. "But seriously, you'll be here, right? We'll need someone to keep things moving." I smiled again. Not wide, not sharp, just enough. "I mean it," I said. "I'll be out of town." Delane blinked like I'd spoken in a different language. Jude tilted his head. "You're going somewhere?" "Yes," where he asked slower this time, as if I might not have thought it through. "I haven't decided exactly," I said, though I had, "but somewhere that doesn't require meal prep for 11 people. Delane laughed again, but this time it was brittle. "Wait, you're actually serious?" "I am." She looked at Jude like he'd fix it. But he didn't say anything. I went upstairs that evening without waiting for more discussion. I didn't owe them a debate. I didn't need to explain why I deserved rest or solitude or peace. That night, I opened my laptop and pulled up the Amtrak site. I searched trains to Colorado, found a quiet route that ran through Chicago, and booked it. One window seat. No return date. Then I called my sister Maeve. We hadn't seen each other in nearly 2 years. "Got room for one tired woman and her coffee mug?" I asked. Her laugh through the phone was instant and full of welcome. Always. I packed my bag slowly that night. No rush, just small folded choices. Sweaters that made me feel warm, not useful. By morning, I had my coat by the door and a note to myself on the fridge. Leave on the 21st. No looking back. The first text came at 8:12 a.m., 2 days after I booked the train. "Hey, quick thing, can you prep the pies before you leave? We'll just bake them here." I didn't reply right away. I was on the back porch, watching the frost melt from the railing, while my coffee cooled in my hands. It was peaceful. So still, I could hear the neighbors' wind chimes down the block. At 9:03, another message. "We're still using your dishes right. The good ones. Can you set them out before you go?" This time, I replied, "You've got this." No sarcasm, no emoji. Just a sentence they hadn't seen from me before. Clear, quiet, and final. By lunch, there were 4 more messages in the group chat. "Can we borrow your table leaf? You still have the cloth napkins. Wait is the vacuum in the hall closet or the garage. Do you have your stuffing recipe written down somewhere?" I put my phone face down and poured another cup of coffee. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I wasn't punishing anyone. I was simply unavailable. And that to them was foreign. They weren't used to me having plans. I had always waited, always accommodated, always shifted things around to keep the wheels turning. When someone forgot something, I remembered. When they dropped the ball, I caught it. And now the ball was rolling toward the floor, and I didn't move. Delane sent a voice message that afternoon, her tone upbeat but edged with strain. Just making sure you're not upset or anything. We just really need this holiday to go smoothly, you know. I didn't respond. Not out of spite, but because there was nothing to clarify. I'd said I was leaving. I was leaving. I reheated some soup, set my planner aside, and pulled my suitcase from the closet. I'd packed light, but now I added one more thing, a novel I hadn't made time to finish in years. The next morning, Jude knocked on my door and cleared his throat. "Mom, can we talk before you go?" 2 days before Christmas Eve, they stopped pretending it was a plan and started trying to renegotiate. Jude hovered outside my door again. "Mom, could you at least stay for the 23rd? Just to help get things started?" I folded a sweater into my suitcase. "No, honey, I won't be here." He sighed but didn't argue. He never used to argue because he never needed to. I always said yes before it came to that. 10 minutes later, Delane's voice called up the stairs. "Could we maybe drop the kids off with you for a couple hours?" Just while we prep, I zipped the outer pocket of my bag. "No," I said gently, loud enough to carry through the hall. They were quiet for a while after that. I thought maybe they'd finally understood. But by mid-afternoon, Jude popped his head into the kitchen where I was making myself tea. "Hey, just realized the turkey's still in your freezer. We don't really have room at our place." I looked at him calmly. "You're welcome to take it." He scratched the back of his neck. "Right. Yeah. It's kind of frozen solid. We might not have time to thaw it before the 24th. I stirred my tea slowly. "Then you might need a backup plan." He didn't hide his disappointment this time. "You know this is a big week for us. Can't you just—" I didn't let him finish. "I know it's a big week. That's why I made my plans early." He stood there waiting for me to crack, to cave, to nod like I always did. But I didn't. Because this wasn't about a turkey or a date. It was about something else, something deeper. They didn't need me to help. They needed me to fold, to agree that my time belonged to them just because they asked. I walked past him, carried my suitcase to the door, and slid my gloves into the side pocket. He said, "So that's it. You're really leaving?" I smiled, not unkindly. "Yes, Jude, I really am." And the next morning, I did. I left before the sun came up. No drama, no goodbyes. No final round of requests or guilt-laced questions. Just a quiet creak of the stairs, the soft thud of my suitcase wheels, and the faint click of the door behind me. The house was spotless. Floors vacuumed. Counters wiped. Dishes put away. I hadn't done it for them, I'd done it for me. I wanted to walk out without a trace of bitterness. I left the turkey in the fridge, along with a handwritten note that simply said, "Hope it thaws in time. Good luck." No smiley face. No apology. Outside, the morning was crisp. The air stung my cheeks as I stepped onto the porch, but I didn't mind. I zipped my coat high and pulled my gloves snug. My cab was waiting at the curb engine, humming softly. The ride to the station was quiet, the city still asleep, lights blinking lazily through the fogged windows. I sipped the coffee I'd brewed before leaving, black strong, just how I liked it. For once, no one had added cream without asking, or let it go cold before handing it to me with a distracted smile. The train platform was almost empty. Just a few travelers shifting from foot to foot, clutching bags and styrofoam cups. I found my seat by the window, slid my suitcase above, and settled in. As the train pulled away, I felt something loosen in my chest. I wasn't running away. I hadn't slammed any doors. I'd simply left on my own terms. No announcement, no fanfare, just absence. And in that absence, a quiet kind of power. I watched the trees blur past the snow-touched fields, the rooftops of houses that looked like mine, but weren't. I thought of Maeve, waiting on the other end, with that same old laugh and the spare bedroom, with the yellow quilt and the coffee shop down the block where no one knew my name. The phone in my purse buzzed once, then twice. I didn't check it. Not yet. I leaned my head against the window and closed my eyes. I didn't hear about it until 2 days later, sitting in Maeve's kitchen with a slice of gingerbread and a second cup of coffee. She was reading aloud from a holiday article when her phone buzzed. She raised an eyebrow, then handed it to me without saying a word. Jude's name lit the screen. I didn't answer. I just read the preview of the message and let it be. Back home, it hadn't gone as planned. The turkey still half frozen when they finally remembered it hadn't thawed in time. Jude tried roasting it anyway, and it came out gray in the middle and dry around the edges. The kids were cranky because nothing was ready. Delane had forgotten to buy cream for the pie filling. The grocery store was closed by the time she realized. An hour before dinner, they were still setting the table, scrambling to find enough clean dishes since the good set was still in my cabinet, untouched. Someone had spilled cranberry sauce on the runner, and the guest bathroom didn't have towels. Jude had pulled some from the laundry basket, still damp. Delane's aunt leaned over and whispered, just loud enough, "Didn't your mother-in-law usually do all this?" No one answered. They ordered takeout. It arrived late, missing 2 entrees and a whole bag of sides. The kids wouldn't eat the mashed potatoes. Delane's mother asked if anyone had wine. No one had thought of that either. By the end of the evening, the trash overflowed. The kids were still wired from dessert. Jude, according to his message, had never seen Delane so stressed. And somewhere in all that chaos, they finally realized everything they'd expected to just happen had always been me. The schedules, the warm food, the folded napkins, the quiet steadiness, the magic. Not because I demanded attention, but because I gave all mine away without asking for any back. And now that I'd stopped, it wasn't just the food or the timing that fell apart. It was the comfort, the shape of the day. That night, I put my phone face down and poured myself another cup. The first call came late in the evening, the day after Christmas. I let it ring twice before answering. Mom Jude said, his voice tight. "You just left." I didn't say anything right away. I was sitting on Maeve's porch, wrapped in a thick throw blanket, watching the last light fade from the pines across the snow-dusted yard. The mug in my hand was warm and full. I wasn't angry. I wasn't gloating. I was simply still. "I told you I was going," I said softly. "You didn't say it like that. You didn't say you were going to just abandon the whole holiday." "Abandon," I repeated. "No. I didn't abandon anything. I made a choice." He exhaled hard on the other end like I'd missed the point. "Why would you do that to us?" I set the mug down carefully on the railing. "I didn't do anything to you, Jude. I did something for me." There was a pause, then another. In the background, I heard Delane say something I couldn't quite catch. Jude murmured back, then silence. I imagined them sitting in the living room, dishes, still unwashed floor, sticky, the smell of burnt stuffing, still faint in the corners. Maybe the kids were asleep, maybe not. It didn't matter. They had survived the holiday, but not the illusion. For years, I had made things seem effortless, seamless. And that illusion cost me time, energy, identity. I wasn't angry at them for missing it. I was disappointed they'd never looked closely enough to see it. "You could have said something sooner," Jude said finally, but quieter now. "I could have," I agreed. And I didn't. That was my mistake. He didn't argue. "I'll call again tomorrow," he said. "You don't have to," I replied gently. Another long pause. Then finally, okay, the call ended. I sat for a while longer listening to the wind, not waiting for another message, just breathing in the quiet I had chosen. The next morning, I woke without an alarm and let myself stay under the covers until the sun reached the window. I woke up to sunlight, not a timer, not footsteps in the hall, not a list waiting on the fridge, just light, warm and quiet, spilling through the curtains in Maeve's guest room. For the first time in years, I didn't move right away. I stayed under the covers, let my limbs rest, and listened to nothing. No oven humming, no chairs scraping, no one calling my name through a cracked door. Eventually, I stretched, stood and padded into the kitchen in my socks. Maeve was already out on a walk, a note on the counter beside a fresh pot of coffee. Take your time. I'll meet you at the cafe. I did. But first I poured a mug and sat in the armchair by the fireplace with a book I hadn't finished since last winter. The flames popped and settled into a soft rhythm, and I read slowly, one chapter at a time, with no interruptions. Later, I walked alone down the snowy trail behind Maeve's cabin. The creek had frozen over thin ice layered in jagged patterns like quiet defiance. I stood there for a while, letting the air press cool against my cheeks, not rushing anywhere, not needed by anyone. At noon, I met Maeve at the cafe, a little place tucked behind the bookstore. The barista smiled and asked what I wanted. Just coffee, I said. Room for cream? No, just black. I sipped it slowly, holding the mug with both hands, feeling the warmth settle deep into my chest. Around me, strangers talked about ski rentals and weekend plans. No one asked what I was bringing to dinner. No one expected anything. I wasn't angry. I wasn't punishing. I was just at peace. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It didn't come with tears or a grand speech. It came with a quiet table, one chair, and a cup of coffee I didn't have to make for someone else. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, the whole day ahead of me belonged only to me.